Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Jules, and today I'm going to be running over how I got into the University of Lausanne, which is in Switzerland, also known as UNIL, and all the formalities that come along with getting into the program as a study abroad. I went back in 2019, spring of 2019, and I've had so much interest in my past videos about how to get in and all that, so I decided to make this video. So let's get into it. So basically, I wanted to go to Switzerland because it was like a dream of mine, and my university, my home university, didn't have any sort of program that was in Switzerland. So they said, start looking at some third parties. So I looked at this third party called ISEP, spelled ISEP. And an important note before I get into this video is that the franc, the Swiss franc back then was equal to $1 US. And also anything I mentioned in this video will be linked down below. Anyways, I looked through this approved third party called ISEP, and they had a program in Switzerland to study French. And at the time I was studying international business, so I had to take French classes, and I had a couple French credits already from prior, but I wanted to rack up those credits and just be done and over with and also have this experience. The reason I liked ISEP is because they had a variety of programs that could help me going in that direction of my degree, but I had my heart set on Switzerland, and they had UNIL as an option. It's super important for you to check with your university if this third party is approved. I think most American universities find ISEP to be legit, and also places like CIEE, but always check, because I applied to a program later, like this abroad program in Panama, and they rejected it because I guess they didn't think it was legit or whatever. The cool thing that I find about ISEP is that they have this thing called a program finder, and where you can basically learn about the different programs and your chances of getting in, so like your placement like factor or whatever. My placement factor for UNIL was excellent, which was like 4 out of 5 basically. The next one up was guaranteed, so I knew I could put my heart and soul into doing this application, and I had a pretty good chance of getting in. But you also have backups that you can choose, so I think I chose like one in France, in the mountains, I don't remember where, and then one in Morocco or something like that. But ISEP's promise is that you will get into one of your programs on your list, basically, even if you don't get into the first or second one. So that seemed pretty attractive to me, rather than going with like my home university's like program lists and their own personal connections, because I knew I was going to get into at least something, and I was going to go somewhere, even if it wasn't Switzerland. UNIL's process on ISEP is very basic, but your home university process will vary, so you need to find out what those things are. But something that you need to keep in mind is to scan or take a photo of every single piece of paperwork you turn into anyone. Something that happened to me right before I left was basically I was filling out this piece of paper that was saying like, these are the classes I'll possibly take abroad, and this is the like equal credit that I'll get when I come back. And then there was like a sign off by the department. Someone somewhere lost my paperwork, and I just didn't have the paperwork, and technically if you don't have that done, you can't go. I was freaking out because they didn't tell me until like 4 days before I was supposed to leave, and I was like pressing them. I remember over like the course of a month, I'm like, where's my paperwork? I really need it. I need to turn it in to like all these people, and they were like, oh, we've got it, it's fine. And then they were like, oh yeah, by the way, we lost it. Like, your university, like, how did you lose my paperwork? So scan your own stuff when it's in your hands so that you have a copy of it. The whole thing like ended up being okay because they wrote an exemption for me, but it was really frustrating. And like when you're young, like you don't really deal with this kind of stuff. So yeah, just have your bases covered. Ever since then, I've always scanned every single piece of paper known to man that I think is important, even like hospital bills, stuff like that, just to have it, because people lose things. That's just being an adult. And yeah, so just cover your bases. So to apply for UNIL through ISEP, you have to gather all your official transcripts and letter of recommendation from someone that teaches you directly. So then you create this like general ISEP application, which can be used across different universities essentially. So that list that I was talking about, you know, I had UNIL and then I had France, Morocco, whatever. I listed UNIL as my first choice, and then I had those other choices. And like I said, they have that promise that you get into any of those universities, at least one of those universities. So you make this general application, boom, 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 plug in all this stuff. They'll send you back some maybe more specific things that you need for that university that you're applying for, whether it's UNIL or something else. You have to gather that information, whatever it may be, and it varies, okay? Another thing is that you need a passport, a valid passport, and if you don't already have your passport and you're thinking about going abroad, getting your toes wet, go ahead and get that done. Go ahead and do the application process, make the appointment. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than they say it will, so get it out of the way before you even get started with all this other like paperwork and applications and stuff like that, because it will just show up at your door finally and you'll be fine. You won't have to worry about like another thing, if that makes sense. Since I was studying French, they wanted my estimated level of language so I could like start looking at classes and seeing which ones would be beneficial to me, but I didn't need any official exam scores. But I do understand that if you are trying to study something like business history, something more specific in French or in English, because they have both, definitely for your master's, they have everything in English, you will need official exam scores for whatever language you're studying in. So that's something to keep in mind. That's not something I had to do as someone who is just studying the language there, but if you are trying to study something specific, you will need to have that. Once I got in, the housing people reached out to me and helped place me in like a university hosted building, which was completely random, by the way. They didn't ask me like anything. Like sometimes colleges will give you a questionnaire of like roommate placement or whatever, and yeah, no, this was completely random. I got placed in a communal apartment called Rodani, and basically it was like 24 rooms on 3 different floors, so 24, 24, 24. Each floor had their own kitchen that was really huge. I think I had like 4 stoves and 4 ovens, and it was crazy. And then we had our own communal living rooms, but then each room was like pretty tiny, and it had its own tiny shoebox bathroom, which was really nice to have your own bathroom. We had a twin bed, a desk and chair, and then like a rolling side table, and then a mini fridge. And then there was like these built-in cabinet closet things, kind of like IKEA furniture-esque. And that was basically it. You didn't need much more. And then in the kitchen, you had your own like pantry locker where you could keep your own food. This place cost me, I think, 515 francs, $515. And it was honestly the most fun experience to live with like all these other people. We also had chores, so we had to take out recycling, and everything was separated, like glass, plastic, whatever, compost, trash, and we had like a tidy schedule. So everybody kind of rotated what they did. It was definitely a struggle for some people, so if you live in a building like this, you have to be okay with people not really knowing how to keep clean and how to do laundry and stuff like that. The housing department was able to rent me linens for I think like 60 francs and a duvet for the whole semester, which to me was worth it because I didn't have to worry about going out and getting that stuff, and then I didn't have to worry about getting rid of it at the end of the semester. It was just gonna go back to their closet and then it would go to somebody else. And it was like super high quality. I actually had like a feathered duvet, like a real nice one. I do know that the housing department has a variety of different apartments, from actual apartments with like multiple rooms and an actual kitchen, and you know, it's an actual home, to like studios, and then more like communal type feels like ours. So it's really random. I don't know if that's changed now. Maybe you can choose where you want to live, but I definitely did not get to choose where I wanted to live when I went abroad. I did have some friends who figured out their own housing, had like a private landlord and everything, and they really liked that. That's a little bit more stressful for sure, but if that's something that you desire, like you just don't want to have an apartment related to the university at all, go for it. I don't know how easy it is or how hard, but I'm sure you can figure it out. As for the visa process, everyone I know basically got their visa and their residence permit there when we got there. not really beforehand. And I think the most confusing part to me was getting the passport photo done, because most Americans, we just go to CVS, get our passport done, or passport photo done there, it's printed, and then we take it to the post office. But in Switzerland, there are these little photo booths in train stations, like in the corner, and malls and like big supermarkets where you can get your passport photo done, and it's like 10 francs, I'm pretty sure, and then you get this little sheet of 4 photos, and then you take it with your application and they snip one off, and that becomes like your passport photo. I was really confused about like how that even worked when I first went into like the visa office, but I figured it out. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory, like all their applications are in French and in English and in German, so like you really don't, it's straightforward. It's like filling out like a credit card application or something. It does cost money, and it ranges from like $100 to a couple $100 depending on where your home passport is from. So just make sure that you have that money on hand. They do take card, and a lot of those workers do speak English, so it's pretty easy, but you will be making trips back and forth a lot because they will need follow-up documents and whatnot. Lastly, let's talk about money. Since UNIL's program is an exchange, you basically pay your home tuition, and then you just show up, and then your tuition's paid for, because allegedly a student there has paid for your tuition and you just swap. But you do need to go ahead and open a Swiss bank account, because you get a monthly stipend deposited to you. I got mine once a month, and I think it was about 1,600 francs every time for 5 months. And that's how I paid my rent, my, food, my activities, my travel, stuff like that. You do need to kind of learn budgeting a little bit, especially if you don't have extra cash in a bank and this is kind of all the money that you have, which for some of my friends that was the case. But yeah, I think that the bank account part was the most intimidating part, because not all the people who worked at the bank spoke English, and the first couple of weeks in a foreign country where you're fully immersed is like really exhausting, because you're trying to think in French all the time, and you think that you know how to speak French, but you really don't. And everything, it's just like a lot of mental work, and it's not as easy as everything else. And like the bank account is it kind of comes last, or at least it did for me and like most of my friends. So maybe my advice to you is get that out of the way as soon as you can, because it's kind of mentally taxing. But over time with the language thing, you get better at it and you learn so much, like in such a short amount of time, and it does become a lot easier. But those first couple of weeks, like I think everybody I knew had at least one little like anxiety attack or breakdown, and they were like, oh my god, like I don't know what I'm doing. It's like imposter syndrome. I don't know how to speak this language. I'm really scared. I'm nervous. I can't even go to the supermarket without being some sort of way. I don't know. But it does get easier. If you have any more specific questions, please let me know. I may make another video about transportation there. Basically, trains and half pass. All you gotta get. But just drop any questions down below and I will try to answer them, or someone in the community can try to answer them. But thanks for watching, and thanks for picking my video over everybody else's, and have a great day.